Yo, Tech, let's make something happen.
In a world full of rush, pause for a drink. Pure, clear, and fresh. Let your mind think. In every sip of 1 alkaline, you'll find a taste so pure, refreshes the mind. With a 9.5 pH, it's balanced just right. Electrolytes to keep you bright. Potassium fuels your everyday, keeps you glowing in every way. Drink water and mind your business until it's time to stand on it. 1 alkaline, the water that keeps you glowing. Let's glow.
Grace and peace to all, grace and peace to all, and good morning on this Saturday morning. I can't believe we're already at the end of July. It seems like we had just began this month, the greatest month out of them all. I'm a little biased, being that July is my birthday month, but I just want to say peace and love to everybody joining us on Instagram. Shout out to you all. T. Johnson, what's going on? I see my brother, Big Nate. Hoggett, what's going on? Peace to you all. Thanks for joining this morning. All my people on Facebook and YouTube. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. Won't be before you too long this morning, but just want to share a couple things. As always, I think I'm gonna put my pastoral hat on a little bit. Might put my a little bit of the social activist. May not, and then we'll discuss our book of the month, and then we've got some big things happening. As people are coming in, let me just get a couple more things I want to pull up. So I gotta find it, y'all. Give me a second. But I hope everybody is doing well. Everybody's doing well. Let me see. We'll try to pull that up, but we'll see how that works out. All right. So once again, we might just talk a little bit. It's kind of gonna fall under the umbrella, but kind of speak to some of the impacts. You know, everybody's talking about the bill that was passed and the repercussions coming to programs such as SNAP and Medicaid. And I thought it was interesting. So I'm gonna touch a little bit just on that impact with SNAP and some things that are moving in real time. Um, so we'll jump into that, and then just that might lead us to some other spaces, and then we'll finish out with our book. Just want to say shout out, as you saw the commercial when we open. Let me hold it right here because this is significant right here. You see that 1 in a million alkaline water. You saw the commercial with my brother, A Million the Poet, and my other brother, the co-CEO Hey, Zachary Shepard, shout out to you all. But this is the new 1 liter bottle from One in a Million alkaline water. Oh yeah, they doing big things. You know, you often saw me drink the regular 12 or 16. Well, might be wrong, but now they have the liter, the big dog, which will hold me down, right? So shout out to them and all they're doing, and my complimentary leader. Appreciate you, brother A. Zachary. Salute to you and all the things you're doing, and his foundation, Kinder Care in Anejo, which is doing big things on the continent. So with that said, shout out to them. You saw the promo. Not this Wednesday coming up, but next Wednesday, August 6th, we will have Technician the DJ. As you know, I am hip hop, and we're going to do it for the culture. So shout out to Technician the DJ, Malcolm Teasdale, the Boogie Down Bronx. Salute to you all, and we're looking forward to that. But I'm also going to have a special guest on this Wednesday, but I'm gonna kind of hold that. I'm gonna kind of hold that for a little bit because we're about to start sending the promos out for that, and we'll talk about it. We'll look out, and I may at the end of the show because it kind of pertains to the book. So it's a hint, it's an author, but big things coming up in the month of August. So with that said, let's get ready to get started. All right, peace. Just want to give a shout out real quick. I had the opportunity this past week, and let me see if I will be able to display this. Let me see. No, let me do it this way. And I hope you all will be able to see it. It might be a little big, but this past Wednesday, I had the opportunity to attend a discussion of a panel in Winston-Salem. As now I'm pastoring in the Winston-Salem area, and it was a good discussion on plantation politics. And it was a space for an open dialogue on a little bit of history of the area, and then a discussion on how we can move collectively. And I hope you can see that. I'm sorry, I'm kind of scrolling. It might be a little big, so I'm gonna try to get it all there. But what stood out for me was the honesty within the discussion, and there was a very diverse group from ethnic makeup, race, age, gender, what have you, socioeconomic, very diverse group in there for the discussion, and it was just wonderful to be in a space, because oftentimes it's division, or group against group, or this age group against this age. It's often division, right? And we never get to have those true and honest discussions about what's identified as the problem and what could be possible solutions. Or often they're dominated by one group or this movement or whatever. But it was an open discussion, and it came from those who are on the ground doing the work, who may not often get the quote unquote mainstream platforms, as we may say. But it was people that's doing groundwork in the area, hosted by Action for Equity. which is a nonprofit in Winston-Salem, comprised of very many individuals doing great work. Discussion was gathered together with a couple of community activists and a pastor from the Moravian Church, who spoke to some of the Moravian history in the area, which was very interesting. So great discussion, and shout out to Action for Equity for hosting that. Shout out to my comrade, Ms. Linda Winikoff of the Poor People's Campaign, the Triad Circle. I'll be getting more information about that. You see the forward together, not one step back. But shout out to Ms. Linda for making me aware of that and having the opportunity to attend that. So with that, we understand that there is a need for justice and all the work, right? There has to be the intentionality for the greater good. And sometimes it might not always be pretty. There are going to be some tough conversations. And there will be some that may not have true intentions, right? They may have certain reasons or certain agendas, but nevertheless, it's always good when we can come together and have those discussions. So let me run my captions so my producers don't get on me. So with that, I want to jump into this. The bill that had been passed recently, and a lot of this came up, let me preface it by this, was, in keeping up with the National Urban League, who just recently had their conference this past week. They put out their statement and study calling for a state of emergency for Black America. And I was looking through some of the subjects, and then there was an article from the Capital B specifically speaking to the impacts of the target on Medicaid, SNAP, student loans. And it was interesting because the church I serve presently, we offer a weekly food pantry. And shout out to those who contribute their time and efforts to that. And I'll get into details later. But we serve maybe on average 80 to about 120 a week. But we saw an uptick in numbers recently, right? And then in that, as many in our area, we receive a lot of food from the Second Harvest Food Bank. And then, you just hear the discussions of everything because, Second Harvest has put out some statements of how with these cuts, they're not sure that they will be able to sustain the possible increase of the need of food. And I think for every one family, it takes, their study showed about 9 servings or whatever. I don't have the wording right. I was just reading up on it earlier in the week. My apologies for that. But yet they feel that there will be an increase in need coming and the fear of not being able to sustain it. And then I look at this with the situations going on around the world in Gaza and Sudan and the Congo, where people are starving and aid is being held up or slowed. And it's just a difficult situation. But we look right here at home in our own communities and everything, where now we see people will be impacted. But I wanted to just go into a little bit of it, because sometimes there's some things that we don't know, or little intricacies we're not aware of, just to kind of educate ourselves. But the Congressional Budget Office analysis estimates that about 3 million more people could lose their eligibility for food assistance. Roughly 27% of adult and child SNAP recipients are Black. And like the congregation I serve, we are in a Black community, predominantly Black community, who we serve. But there was a study done by the Pew Research Center, and I'm not gonna get into the midst of this, but there are just some things we need to understand. So now this study gathered information about around April of 2023, so it's kind of old, but it was still kind of in the range. And one thing that is alarming, we have to understand that about 42 million people, 41.9 million people, which is about 22.2 million households, receive SNAP benefits. And at this time, that's about 12.5% of the population. Right now, the average they've seen, and this comes from about 2022, was about 41.2 million and about 21.6 million households. So we've seen an increase, right, just in the last couple of years, or 2.5 years, almost 3 years, in those who receive SNAP benefits. And a lot of it rose after our Great Recession, and it peaked around 2013, where we were at about 18.8% receiving these benefits, which was about 23 million households and about 47 million people. And then things kind of fluctuated after COVID, and now they're kind of stabilizing down a little bit back to those numbers we see now that I gave you, the 12.5%. But the key is there was just a breakdown of ages. And the interesting thing is that ages 6 to 11, right? Well, let me say ages 0 through 11, right? Our young kids, right? Even if you want to go up through the teens, let's say from 18, right? Is about 32%, I'm sorry, almost 40% of recipients are youth under the age of 18. Let me go. 0 to 5 is 12%, 6 to 11 is 12.7%, 12 to 14, 6.5%, and then 15 to 17 is 5.6%. Now, my math may be off, 24, 36. So around 36, 37%, almost 40%, right, are under 18. But then the rate between 25 and, well, let's just say 25 to older makes up the bulk, right, which is about 55%, 56%, 25 through 65 plus. So we see how the young are impacted and the older. The largest portion receiving are those between 25 and 44, right, which is 23%. When you look at the breakdown, right, and that's as of 2020. 62.7% are individuals identified as white, 27% Black, 3.8% Asian, 6.6% all other races, and then 27% Hispanic or any race. Native born, 87.8%, right, of their population. Foreign born, 12.2%. And I'm coming to the end. But what was also noticed in these trends, right, the vast majority of both adult and child recipients were born in the United States, right? It's 82% and 97%. So these are native born people who have struggles. And there are a lot of things they look at this to attribute to. They look at education, where it was shown that 62.4% either had a high school diploma or lower, right? And then let me see, you have 19.6% that receive this benefit that have some college, no degree. And then you have 8 with associate's degree, 9.8%, almost 10% that have a bachelor's degree. So this impacts many people off many, I can't find the word, right? But it's impacting people. I look at some of the requirements, and they say, well, let me just throw this out here. The national average of the benefit received by single person households or per person is $181, and per household family is $343 per year, and it's a drop due to because it was raised up during COVID, the pandemic, and now it's gone back down. But you look at the requirements to receive it, right? There are work requirements, there are training requirements in order to receive this benefit. But you look at those who are unable to work or due to disability or what have you, who are impacted, because I believe in the new bill, the hours are going up to 80 hours a month, and some new requirements for training, which may be difficult. When we look at the time of this study, right, there was only 24% of those receiving this benefit that were working throughout the year. Now, that might be part-time. A lot of that might be part-time jobs, as to hence why they receive the benefit. You got 14% that are only employed a few months of the year, and then 61% at the time were not employed for whatever reason. But we see how this impacts many across many demographics. That's the word I was looking for, right? And I look at those earnings and stuff. They say about 100%, 130% of the poverty line. But I look at it, if I was a single individual with where I was, I would have been eligible for these benefits. I know these benefits helped me through college when my mother qualified for WIC, and when she was a retired teacher, right? So we know the impact on these things, on people and individuals. And one that, I watch the work that we do. We're trying to prepare, because you never know what's on the other side of this, right? So we're trying to increase funding and support to help with our work that we do in serving the community in this manner, because we just don't know. So I say that to be empathetic to those who have worry, who have concern, and not act like, because sometimes if we're not as close to it in our situations, whatever it may be, there's a tendency to disconnect. So, I just encourage those to be empathetic, stay aware of what's going on, because I want to say that to move into more of the pastoral hat. Because, and I might be all over, my apologies. It's been a long week, right? But we look at those scriptures, right, where there's always a call to care for the most vulnerable, right? The widows, the children, right? Never have we not seen a call to care for people in need. If we look at the walk of Christ, it was to those who were sick, who were hungry, who were outcast, right? So if we truly say we're believers and we follow Christ, right, we know that we are called to the care of those. And it can be different ways. It's not saying you got to rush right out and buy a bunch of, it may be Meals on Wheels, right? We have a great Meals on Wheels program at the church I serve, right? It could be a variety of things. But we know as believers, as followers of Christ, we are called to this. And I want to highlight that with scripture, as I guess any good pastor would do. So let me do that. And this is a familiar scripture where Christ is speaking to the disciples in Matthew chapter 25, verses 34. I'll just go to about 40. But it's just a reminder, and read it and think on it and contemplate on it and discern on it, as we like to say, and think about it in your journey of faith, right? So verse 34, Matthew 25, verse 34 says, then the king, and these are Christ's words, not mine. It's not past Ben, it's Christ's words. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Then the righteous, let me say that, the righteous, right? These are people that have committed to serve the will of God, right? And follow Christ. The righteous, verse 37 says, then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it we saw you sick or in prison and visited you? Verse 40 says, and the king will answer them, truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine. Let me say that again. Verse 40 says, and the king will answer them, truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it to me. So we see that call, right, to the vulnerable. So there's no question. So when we look at it, we always understand that there has to be a level of compassion, empathy, love, which is a part of the two great commandments, that has to be at the center of our walk daily, especially if we say we believe. And let me highlight this, because it wasn't just Christ. Even John said it plainly, right? When he was calling out those who were running to be baptized, you brood of vipers, who told you, right? But John said to them in Luke chapter 3, verse 11, he said, whoever has two coats must share with anyone who has none. He didn't say with a specific person. He said anyone, right? Whoever has two coats must share with anyone who has none. And whoever has food must do likewise. Right? It's never where we say, well, it's your own fault. Right? And I get it. Sometimes we on the move in life and we might not want to be bothered certain times of the day, right? But there is something. If we see it, we recognize it, there's something we must do. If we say we follow. Now, if you don't say I follow, I'm just kind of a sometime Christian, okay. I'm not here to judge, but if we say we follow, you know what the call is, and there's plenty more to that. I'm gonna just leave it right there, because I'm getting a little long-winded, and I'm not trying to be before you too long. But understand this, right? There is a sacrifice when you follow Christ, right? And in many ways we sacrifice, and it could be a variety of ways, but we don't. In this walk, I urge you, as I said before, try not to look at sacrifice as losing something, but look at it as what you're gaining. Christ sacrificed so that the world, he could reconcile all things, right? And free the world, right? So when we sacrifice, it's not losing, it's what are we gaining? If we sacrifice to help someone, we gain another sibling, right? We gain something. When we fast, it's not what we're doing without, it is what we are enhancing or what we are gaining from. Okay. So with that said, I'm not going to belabor that point, right? But let me do this, and then we're going to go through the book. I'm going to highlight a point from our book of the month, and then I'm going to get up out your way, because I know y'all got things to do on Saturday, just as I do. I'm going to try to get shaped up. That's why I've been wearing this hat, man. I've been going a while without a cut. So let me do this, and then we're going to get ready to close it. Right? So our book of the month, and I'm motivated by this, right? Social entrepreneurship, what everyone needs to know, right? Like I said last week, it's just a book I read, I was able to report on in seminary while I was at Duke, right? And basically, right, this was the inspiration for me to get out and kind of move and do things and ideas and try to start doing things that could, be a resource or help people, right? But this was one of the books that awakened me to the thought of, as I said before, we say nonprofits, but non has that negative connotation. And they highlight in this book, let's call them for-purpose organizations. Now, we know on paper they might be nonprofit, but when we speak and engage, we call them for-purpose organizations, right? Staying steadfast in the purpose. But the one thing I wanted to highlight was the difference between social entrepreneurship, right, and activism, right? Now, I'm a part of the Triad Circle Poor People's Campaign, which we're trying to get back rolling and active. So if you want to join, just email me, check with me. We'll get you information on that. But, we see with the Board Monday marches, the prayer sessions at state capitol, the U.S. Capitol, right? Dr. Bob and other groups and marches, we see activism. But there's a difference between activism and social entrepreneurship that we want to kind of, because we know many of these organizations use the nonprofit space and organization to mobilize and do stuff as well. And sometimes things can be conflated. But the distinction was made in this book to where, simply put, activism elicits change, right? And it attempts to influence the thinking of large institutions and public attitudes, right? So it's trying to change. They are great to highlight a social issue, right? A policy issue. They highlight that in many, the goal is to change the attitudes towards these things, or inject some influence on these larger institutions to see the problem and address the problem, right? And these are seeds for change, right? But social entrepreneurship is a little more broad, and this is where I kind of fall because I'm more of the social entrepreneur than the activist, and being all honest, right? And we try to show up where there's a need. But social entrepreneurship is a little more broad, especially when we throw that entrepreneurship on the end of that title, right? It's not focused on Fortune 500, but when you say social entrepreneurship, it's more broad in the scope, or the focus is building institutions, right? And implementing solutions, right? The activism calls attention to the problem. It urges the change it needs to have. And then the social entrepreneurship kind of spawns from that. We're going to be the solution. And that solution starts with building our institutions that help educate, sustain, right? Advocate, what have you. And that's kind of the subtle difference, because everybody is maybe not, their passion is not marching. Maybe their action is to organize people or institutions, right? To do after school programs, or community book studies, or community gardens, whatever, right? Everybody has a role, everybody has a gift. And that's the thing that this book highlights, right? And then the key with the social entrepreneurship that makes it different from what we think in general entrepreneurship or business or whatever, instead of starting top down like CEO and stuff, social entrepreneurship builds with people from the ground up. And it starts with the people. And it may start as an activist movement or mobile movement, right? And then things grow out of it. But the key is that we build institutions that help sustain and bring us closer in community, and they truly bring the solution to the problem. That's why my nonprofit was called Clergy for Cures, because many a times we address the wounds and the symptoms, right? Which brings about activism. And in social entrepreneurship, that is a vital source, right? Social entrepreneurs incorporate activism, right? But that might be for a specific time, specific day, specific issue. But what spawns from that is where we get into the building of the institution that will help bring the solution, right? So it's a good book. I hate we didn't get a chance to cover it. I was doing some traveling, some long days, but we'll get it posted so you can find it. And I got to do better getting links on the Instagram page. But for those of us who are looking, that want to do things and get started or whatever, it just starts with one thing that you're passionate about. And a lot of times we get into who will fund it and stuff, and that's big, and that's chapter or part 2 of this book, right? The funding and those focused on that. But to raise a voice and lift up something, it can start with one person and just your passion for it. And I think everybody else will gravitate. The energy, the magnetism. I don't want to get into that bad right now. I'm staying, but we'll draw people to that who have a purpose that is likened to yours. So with that, I'm gonna end it right there. Remember, August 6th, Wednesday Wisdom. We're gonna have Technician the DJ. But this Wednesday, I'm gonna give it up. We're gonna have a special author on. So please look, I'm gonna start getting that out tomorrow and getting it out But we're gonna have a special treat for you on Wednesday with one of our local authors here in North Carolina who is doing big things. His organization has done some big things. So we gonna get all into it. And once you see this brother, right? You gonna be changed. You gonna say, I need to follow that brother. He whoo, right? And let me just make sure, this is we talked about Christ saying those parables. Remember, love is a parable. I'm gonna throw that. That's a nugget. That's a nugget. So with that, I'm gonna let y'all go and enjoy your Saturday. I appreciate all who joined us. Thank you. I pray you have a blessed weekend. Listen, subscribe, like, share, do all of that. All right, and we out.